Don't Pay UK is a campaign group calling for the mass non-payment of energy bills. They're aiming to get 1 million people to commit to not paying their bills this October, with the idea being that if enough people get involved, potential consequences for non-payment will be impossible to enforce. It is undoubtedly a very ambitious plan, and it sounds very hard to pull off. But it has already made waves in some surprising quarters. Money-saving expert Martin Lewis has mentioned the idea numerous times, including in this recent interview.
The big movement that I am seeing is an increasing growth of people calling for a non-payment of energy bills process.
So a strike,
mass non-payment. Effectively a consumer strike on energy bills.
And now Dominic Cummings has got in on the action. He tweeted a graphic from the group and said this could be a big deal, much undervalued in SW1. SW1 is the postcode for Westminster. Cummings links to his blog in that tweet where he's written this: I've got a feeling that if a few people who understood campaigns started organising a network to spread the message, stop paying bills, it could catch fire. And it could catch fire organically without organisation, and SW1 would panic. Threats count for little when people cannot look after their families. People won't starve. If you can't afford energy and food, then you will keep eating and stop paying energy bills. Some will try to organise others to do the same. If we all stop paying around here, what can they do? They can't send us all to jail. We can't afford to pay, so we should get others to do the same and pressure London. Maybe they'll have to let us off. So that's him, imagining someone discussing this campaign. And he says, this logic is rational. Usually this problem, bills, doesn't breach some hard-to-determine critical threshold. But the quality of the British state's contingency planning for emergencies has been terrible for many years, and the steps we started in summer 2020 to improve this have been largely abandoned. You've got lots of self-aggrandizement as usual, but interesting that he's taking on board the possibility that this could be a big deal. Now, in that judgment, Cummings seems persuaded by a report from a focus group of Tory voters published on the website Conservative Home. So these are some quotes from the focus groups. They included this: I'm going to tell you something honestly. Now, a lot of people I've been speaking to have literally point blank told me that if they start to increase anymore, they will point blank refuse to pay the bills. And in my friend's words, and everyone should. What will they do then? Another participant said this: what the hell? These politicians need to listen to us. If we've got no enjoyment, you're just working to pay bills. And even when you're working, you're not able to pay them. Somebody needs to do something. Now, those were quotes from participants in these focus groups. Remember, Tory voters. The person who conducted the focus group, though, wrote this: a few months ago, most working class voters put rising living costs in context. They believed national COVID debt and the Russian invasion of Ukraine had raised inflation in Britain and across the world. As such, while extremely concerned, they didn't blame the government. Things are now changing, and the Tories ought to be very worried. Many people face the prospect of their money literally running out. Their comments about boycotts were a natural response. What else can they do? Ash, we've discussed this campaign a few times now. When I first heard about it, I was like, that's going to be really, difficult to organize that many people without a massive organization. But it is interesting in these surprising places where it seems to be getting traction. Do you see sort of mass resistance as inevitable at this point, given that people are literally not going to be able to pay their energy bills?
Well, look, I'd say nothing is inevitable, but I think it's highly likely. So I've been talking to some of the individuals from the Don't Pay campaign, and in terms of the demand for the leaflets, which is kind of the organising stage where they are now, it has been increasing exponentially. So over the course of the weekend, they've had 1,700 orders for leaflets. So I think it's highly likely that we're going to be looking at a week in which they are distributing 1 million leaflets. Considering this campaign didn't really exist until a few weeks ago, that is an enormous logistical achievement. The second thing that they've done is have a bit of an organising call. Now, I've been told that participants on this call included Tory voters, moms, religious leaders. That's telling you that there is support emerging from political quarters and aspects of civil society which don't normally get drawn into, what's the new left-wing thing. So this is a demand and a call to action which is transgressing usual subcultural and political party alignments. And I think the third thing which is smart about this campaign is that it has chosen one single target, which is energy companies. Now, the cost of living crisis is going to be felt an awful lot of different ways. Michael, I know that you talk about the increasing price of rent an awful lot. For other people, that's going to be manifested in increased interest rates. For some people, the cost of filling up their car is going to be the thing which really inhibits them from being able to get to work. For others, it's going to be the cost of food and groceries at the shop. But anyone who's got a house to heat has to pay energy bills. So this was actually, I think, a really smart choice of target. The energy companies, as we know, have been posting absolutely obscene profits, five-fold increase in profits for Centrica, two-fold increase in profits for Shell, and people can see that it's simply not right. You can't tell the country you're all going to have to get poorer after a decade of lost wage growth. And for some people, there is absolutely no give whatsoever. A recent survey found 1 in 8 people are already at the point where they feel there are no areas in their life where they can economize even further. And the sums of money that they're having to find in the course of a year is perhaps £1,000, £1,500, £2,000. People can't just magic that money out of their ass, particularly when businesses are using the inflation crisis as an excuse not to bolster their pay packet. So I think that this has got the potential to be a really big campaign. People are talking about it in potential being a poll tax moment. So we'll see if this kind of demand for leaflets, I think a really astonishing support that they've gotten from unlikely quarters, translates to really effective on the ground organising. But this is a campaign to watch.
The idea, I presume, is that if you get enough people not paying their bills, you clog up the courts. If you don't pay a bill for long enough, you might get a county court judgment, but that has to go through the courts. If you've got 1 million people who haven't paid, that's obviously going to become quite difficult. Have you got any sense of how is everyone going to know that other people are doing the same thing?
The sequencing, I understand it, is to get 1 million pledges. And so the 1 million pledges are supposed to happen before the October price cap lift. So the idea is that before the price cap is due to go up, which will stick households with bills around £3,850 by some estimates, you are going to have forced the government into negotiations with the energy companies. So the idea is you get the 1 million pledges. But of course, a pledge only works if you're serious about carrying it out. Word to Keir Starmer. So the idea is that if you've got 1 million pledges, you've got 1 million people willing to cancel their direct debits on October the 1st, then you do clog up the courts. They can't disconnect everybody. There is something which is quite important to point out, which is that the Don't Pay campaign, as I understand it, haven't asked people on prepay meters, which is, the gas and electric key, to participate, because obviously if they don't pay, they immediately get cut off. But for anyone on a direct debit, the gamble is that the energy companies aren't going to be able to cut everybody off, and that the 1 million pledges itself can be enough to force the government to make commitments on keeping energy bills at a relatively affordable level.